Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. I'm not gonna lie, after reading 6 books for review in 16 days, and another indie book beyond that, I might be starting to feel a little bit of the burnout this month. So if you see a little break in these reviews for a little bit, that's why I'm recuperating. But I could not skip this one, because this is, it's a good one. And that is Ascendant by Kimberly Gray. Now, this book, I had a little bit of a ride with before I even started reading it. I was, of course, sent an email by the author for review, and I was really intrigued by the idea. This is a YA fantasy involving angels, hence the feather on the cover, about a young-ish angel named Grace who has grown up believing that she, as a white wing, is on the good guy side and the black wings are on the bad guy side, and she is basically in training for all of her life to defeat them under the tutelage of Father. And she ends up trapped in Blackwing territory when a mission goes wrong, ends up a hostage, and in that time being hostage, realizes that maybe everything she learned growing up about the Black Wings isn't true. And I love those kind of stories, the kind where you realize that war isn't this neat, nice thing between good guys and bad guys, and what you were taught about your enemies may not be exactly what they are. And I was really into it. And then I got nervous because one of the sites, I don't remember what I was looking at, but I was looking at something about this book on some random platform, and it was described as a Christian YA novel. I am not of that belief system. I was for 20 years. I am not no longer. And I'm not holding anything against that. But I have been burned before with Christian fantasy books that are basically thinly veiled proselytizing. The latest, greatest / worst example of this was actually something I read last month that had a beat for beat retelling of the crucifixion with the character converting and like just thrown in there halfway through the story. So I was kind of iffy about this because I'm like, it's angels. How much more on the nose could it be? But thankfully, extremely pleasantly surprised. Grace is not a Christ analogy. There's no real Christ analogy. There's definitely themes throughout the course of the book, especially near like the tail end, like the last, I think it's like the last 10 pages basically, where you're like, oh, okay, the next book might have a little bit more of those themes. But for the most part, this one was just, which is nice. I really liked this one, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. Grace is fairly young. I'm not quite sure exactly how young she's supposed to be. I think she's like 140 years old, but for her people that's still young. Like other characters still refer to her as a fledgling, and I'm not sure if it's like an exact 10-to-1 matchup where, you know, 140 years in their time is like 14 years in ours. That's kind of what I was going for most of it, but she might be older than that. You kind of gotta guess with it, but she definitely is considered a youngling in their world. So there is that YA aspect. And again, I just need to do a video on this. She had a lot more of that vulnerability that is so prevalent in indie YA, where the characters will always get like really, really freaked out at points and be like, I'm too young for this. I genuinely need help because I'm too young for this. And I love that. In this case, she wanted the love of Father, and she always refers to him as Father, never Dad or anything. She loves him, and she knows that he only wants the best for her, even if he has to punish her when she makes a mistake. And I'm not entirely sure it's to the level of needing content warnings for child abuse. Maybe emotional child abuse, maybe neglect. So if that's something you're really, really worried about, go in with a little bit of care. But I'm not a survivor, and it's not that overt. So go into it with a grain of salt if you have, you know, if you have a trigger of that kind. But in general, I loved it. I think my personal favorite part and I am going to try to speak about this without spoiling it. The last third or so becomes a little bit of a survival story. Self-imposed. It is a mission that Grace undertakes because in her mind there is something she needs to make up for. There's a wrong that she believes she has committed, that she has to basically do something to even out the karmic balance, more or less. But there was a lot of tense moments in that part, and it's where you see her perseverance really shine through. I love that. There is a reveal that I did not see coming. The Ascendant of the title refers to what is essentially the heir apparent. Both sides have kings or queens, and their heir is referred to as an ascendant, and the Black Wings are supposed to have like this mythical ascendant that's this incredibly cold, cruel woman with, I think they describe it as like red eyes and long white blonde hair. And when you find out who it is, it's a nice surprise. I appreciated the surprise. Let me think what else. Oh, not explicit diversity, but there are major characters that are darker skinned. I think, judging by the descriptions, they're supposed to be like very darker skinned, like African American. There's also a delightfully platonic brother-sister-esque relationship that Grace develops with another character. And that is something that is just so underrepresented in YA fantasy. It seems like every other YA fantasy has to be a romantic love, and in this case there is a character that Grace comes to think of as a brother, and he thinks of her as a sister, and they're like dedicated to each other's welfare and love, but it's totally platonic, and I loved that. Also probably because there's a little bit of an age gap between them. I think, again, I'm not sure what exactly counts for what age in this world, so I don't want to be like, oh no, pedophilia. I'm guessing it seems like there was an age gap, so I was happy that it was a platonic relationship, brother-sister type thing. But I think the greatest overall aspect that I loved the most was the world building. In a lot of cases when you get very, fantasy that's built in a place that is just totally not Earth at all, like this is. We're dealing with the Citadel and the Refuge, and I think this is supposed to take place in a world essentially above ours. Like, the book acknowledges that humans exist, but like, they're not even in the story. They might be in future stories, I don't know. But, so this is totally other, and I was expecting the standard, the character would mention something, and then there'd be the block of expository text, and they say something in the block of expository text, and there wasn't. You basically follow Grace through the first, I'd say about at least 25 pages before you really get the gist, and you're a little bit confused, but no one's going to be going like, oh yes, do you remember the time in our histories when the two twins, like, it's told at the beginning very loosely, as you would speak about your people's history. We don't walk around talking about, the July 4th, 1776. Let's talk about that at the dinner table on a random Tuesday night. But the world building was done very well. There is some expository, but it's all in the form of journals, visions, stories told, that kind of thing that Grace learns about firsthand. So it was done very well. It was done very, what's the word I'm looking for? Organically, I guess you could say. And I really appreciated that. Maybe I've just been reading a lot of expository heavy fantasy. Again, being a mood reader, that affects so much of the way I view books, to the extent where I will actually stop reading a book that I in theory should be liking because whatever reason it's not scratching the itch at the moment, especially right now. Like I said, if I don't do something quick, I'm on the verge of a slump, and I'm trying so hard because I want to finish into August strong. But this was a delightful read, and more than anything, I appreciated that you can read this as a non-Christian and not be inundated with the themes and stuff. Of course, there are the themes running through it, but no Bible verses are mentioned, no, biblical characters are in it. There's the themes there. You can see it, especially at the end, But if you're not a believer, this isn't gonna hit you over the head, which was really nice. And I assume, again, I was in that belief system for 20 years, and I'm assuming that if I'd read this when I was still in that belief system, that I would really connect with those things. It's been years. It's been like 6 years. So my reading tastes have changed so much in those 6 years, so I can't say. There were a couple moments, if I had to give any critiques, where Grace did act a little bit too much like a standard YA protagonist, where like, oh, of course, you're the one that's being tasked with this. But in general, it was only a couple moments throughout the course of the story, and the rest of it was done well enough that I didn't mind it too much. I could overlook it. There was enough other twists and turns and nice, big, meaty things to think about in the realm of, you know, themes and ideas and that kind of thing, which is some of my favorite parts of a book. So in general, 5 stars. Was not expecting this to be a 5-star. I went from excited to wary to excited again over the course of this book. So, well, over the course of deciding to review this book. It's been a roller coaster, but so happy I picked it up. I'm so happy that I have almost all of my physical indie arcs read at this point. As for the digital, we just won't talk about those right now. I'm working on it. But regardless, if you would be interested in reading more, I might try to get the sequel. Kimberly, if you're watching, I'm up for it. I haven't reviewed a sequel yet, and I'm kind of bummed. I kind of want to. I want to like play around with the formatting of that would be. Also, I hope you're liking my new setup. Finally got a second bookcase, and now it's all books behind me. You can't see, but up there on the top shelf of this bookcase is actually the indie arcs. I might be moving it down because I would love to have them in the background. That way the indie authors that send me their physical books can see them on the video regularly. But I'm playing around with it. Probably won't do anything even close to a like bookshelf tour because that's too much work. But beyond that, if you are an indie author and interested in sending me a review copy, please email me. My email will be down in the description below. Also take a look at my review policy. That is a constantly updated document that should have everything you need to know about what I do and what you need to do to send me a request to get a video like this. If you are enjoying these and you're having a great indie August, please leave me a comment down below telling me all about it. I'd love to know if you are tackling as many indie books as I am. Leave a comment in general if you like this kind of thing or if the story sounds good. Please maybe a like if I can swing it. And subscribe. But with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.